Bills Mafia. We know there's only one topic every day, all Bills all the time. And now Matt Bovee and Sal Capaccio are going really deep, talking Bills all year long, because it's always game day in Buffalo.
It's a special edition of It's Always Game Day in Buffalo. Sal Capaccio, Matt Bovee with you. Matt, we always love having terrific guests on the program. And the guy we're going to bring in next is no stranger to the NFL, played for many years, now a broadcaster as well. I'll let you introduce our special guest.
Well, if memory serves me correct, I'm pretty sure our special guest beat the Bills in a Super Bowl. So I don't really know exactly how excited they're going to be to hear from him, but it's Mark Schlereth. What's going on, Mark? Thanks for joining us.
Well, to be fair, everybody beat the Bills in the Bowl. Wow. So I mean, if we're just going to be fair about it. No, it's going great. God, it's been so much fun. You know, I mean, over the years, right, watching those Buffalo Bills teams that went to 4 straight, you know, they were kind of a punchline for a long time. But as the years pass, it's so remarkable what they were able to accomplish as a football team. I mean, they were so loaded. They were so good. Unfortunately for them, they never won one. I was glad they didn't win against us. But it has aged a lot differently than it did at first when you talk about that. Just the remarkable nature of being able to go to 4 straight is pretty much unprecedented, well, it is unprecedented, but it's unbelievable that they were able to do that. So have a lot of respect for the Bills of those times. And now it's fun. I think everybody secretly kind of hopes for the Bills. Like anybody, like if you're in NFL parlance, you know, the history of the Buffalo Bills, I think that secretly you kind of hope that, well, especially with Kansas City having the success they're having, because, you know, I'm a AFC West guy, so I can't stand the Chiefs. So we all secretly hope for the Bills and they get over the hump and actually bring one home to Buffalo. That would be awesome.
Well, that's really good that you started the way you did, but you've come back and Loud Bills fans will like you again for saying that you hate the Chiefs. All right, let me say this too. First of all, Mark is the host of the original Odyssey podcast, The Stinkin' Truth. Obviously played in the NFL for quite a while, had a great career. Now he's been in broadcasting. And Mark, speaking of the Bills back then and the transition to now, you also were on the call when the Bills won the division championship for the first time since the 90s in 2020 for NFL Network in Denver on a game on a Saturday afternoon. You were on that game. That was kind of like where, okay, this is real now. This team is who they are. Josh Allen was phenomenal that day in Denver. Obviously, that was during the COVID year. You've seen this team through the transition, just kind of reflecting back over the last 6-7 years, and especially since Josh Allen's been here. What do you see from this iteration of the Buffalo Bills and where the organization is?
Well, obviously, when you talk about talent, the Buffalo Bills are as talented as anybody in football. And then, of course, this offseason, they've lost some of that talent, moving on from receivers. You know, Milano got hurt in camp. That really, you know, that's one of those things that hurts them. So they lost a lot of players, whether free agency, whether they just decided not to go in that direction. But here's kind of one of the things I like about what they've done. All right, so Josh Allen's absolutely incredible. There's nobody going to argue how good that guy is, and he is so smart. He's so witty. I really like Josh Allen a lot. I did an event with him years ago, and it was incredible because it was at a Super Bowl, and so we're doing this event together. It was myself and T.J. Watt and Josh Allen, and so I'm flipping T.J. Watt, you know, some grief, and T.J. Watt's just kind of like taking it. And then I flip Josh Allen and we're in front of this crowd, you know, it's kind of fun. And man, he came right back over the top and got after me. And I was like, okay, I like Josh Allen. Like Josh Allen can play. So he's witty, he's smart, super intelligent, he's got a great football acumen, if you will. And the guy is absolutely one of the most talented guys in the National Football League. But here's kind of what I like about the transition, if you will. You know, for years, I have kind of thought, like, when the going gets tough, this coaching staff oftentimes, in my mind, puts too much on Josh's plate. And one of the things I think about the quarterback position is you can't have that guy play on the high dive the entirety of the game. Because if he does, eventually you're going to make a mistake. Eventually, you know, you're going to put him in a position to, you know, to cost you a game or to throw a pick in the red zone or to whatever, you know, whatever the case may be. So for me, you lose a little bit of the talent on the offensive side of the ball. It actually makes you coach a little bit, right? And so I think one of the things that a lot of offensive coordinators I talk to and a lot of head coaches I talk to is we definitely have to have what we call breather plays for a quarterback. Breather plays are plays where I don't have to think, right? I just don't like, it's just a tank play. We call it, we run it, we hand the ball off, and you get that playoff from all the mental gymnastics that you have to basically be in charge of, play in and play out. And I think for the Buffalo Bills, oftentimes I look back to that Kansas City game, that playoff game, the divisional round game, where like they are absolutely throttling Kansas City. And all of a sudden, at some point in that game, from a coaching staff standpoint, I felt like they just said, here comes Mahomes. He's playing. Instead of doing what we've been doing, instead of running the snot out of the ball, instead of taking the pressure off of Josh Allen, let's just throw it back on his plate. Josh, go win us the game. And I just don't think that's a recipe for long-term success over the course of a season, especially come playoff time. So for me, I'll be really interested to watch how this offense kind of changes and morphs. And maybe they take a little bit off of Josh's plate so he's not constantly playing, especially late in games, on the high dive, if that makes sense.
No, it definitely does. And I think your perspective is really interesting on this because we're so hyper local. And obviously, what we talk about almost every day is the Bills. And here, I feel like there's a little bit of fear that they're going to take a step back. But if they do, I think people will understand why. And I think nationally, there's a lot of people who think, okay, well, the Jets are the team to beat in the AFC East, or the Dolphins are the team to beat. From your perspective, covering the entire league and, obviously having a good grasp on the Bills, do you think that they still are good enough to go win a Super Bowl? Or are those expectations of the last couple of years supposed to be a little bit lower this year?
Yeah, well, here's they're going to be a little bit lower because of the name value, right? And it's really interesting. I live in Denver, and all I hear on a national basis is the Broncos aren't talented. And I'm like, well, I've been to every camp. I've been to every training camp practice. I'm going, that's not really fair. I think they're really talented. You just don't know any of the names. So there's a name value aspect of talent, and then there's just a talent, right? Once you've established yourself as a guy that can play in this league, then all of a sudden you don't become more talented. You just have some name value. So they lost a lot of name value, especially on the offensive side of the ball with Diggs, moving out to Houston, and obviously, the other wide receiver they lost, the name escapes me really quick.
Gabe Davis.
Gabe Davis. Thank you. So, I mean, so you lost name value, but what have they been building on their roster? I go back to in 1995, playing for the Broncos, we had Anthony Miller. And Anthony Miller was a Pro Bowl wide receiver that we let go because we had a guy on practice squad that I honestly didn't really even know, a guy by the name of Rod Smith. And the coaching staff addressed us as a football team and said, hey, listen, we made this move. Anthony Miller can run. Yeah, Anthony Miller's this, that, and the other. And he went to the Pro Bowl and everything else. But we've got a guy on the practice squad that tears our defense up every single day. And guess what? He's going to be better than Anthony Miller. And so we're all like, who? And they're like, Rod Smith. And we're like, I've seen him. I saw his name tag on the locker, but, I didn't really know him. And sure enough, man, that dude became the greatest receiver in Broncos history. But we didn't even know the name. He had no name value on our own team because we never watched him. We never saw him because he was just always on the scout team for, giving our defense a look. So sometimes decisions are made within an organization that the fan base freaks out about. And the truth of the matter is they've got a dude that's been tearing up their defense for the last 2 years. And they're like, we got to find out. We got to put this guy on a football field. So it'll be really interesting for me to see the transition, with young guys getting their opportunity that have been, on the back of the depth chart because of a guy, like Davis or a guy, like Diggs. So that'll be a really interesting aspect. But as fans, we tend to panic. But we don't see what the coaches see. We don't get to see practice every day. So there are points where you just kind of have to trust what the organization is doing and believe that they've got a plan and they're going to be able to execute that. And of course, a guy like Josh Allen will make up for a multitude of sins, right? He's like compound W. He covers warts. And so even if there's some growing pains along the way, that guy can cover some of the warts until everybody's kind of, more of a finely tuned machine, if you will.
The Compound W sponsorship is going to be knocking on our door very soon. Thank you, Mark. We appreciate that a lot. Let me ask you about Let's go around the AFC here a little bit. Your former team, the Denver Broncos, lots of changes. Of course, last year, Sean Payton didn't go the way they wanted it, but now Bo Nix is there. We see even more changes there. And then how do you handicap the Jets and Dolphins in the AFC East for Bills fans?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. As far as the Broncos are concerned, they made the right choice. Like Russell Wilson has just been awful the last several years, and he wasn't much better, even though statistically he was better. But I know, like, you take a guy in the last 2 years, he's taken more sacks than any quarterback in the National Football League. And he missed at least one. He missed 2 games last year because he got benched, and he missed a game the year before, or 2 games the year before. So he's missed 4 games. He's taken 100 sacks in the last 2 years. And ultimately, one thing that I will tell you about sacks in the way the league operates, it's not like when I played, where we had a lot of 7-step drops. We had a lot of 5-step drops with multiple hitches and stuff. The game is getting the ball out of your hand, the underneath stuff, right? It's really changed with all the short drops, all the 3-step drops, all the bubble screens, all the get the ball out of your hand on 5-step no hitch drops. So for me, sacks have truly become more of a quarterback statistic than it is an offensive line statistic. So if you take a lot of sacks, usually it's your quarterback that stinks.
Mm-hmm.
And I know last year, 45 sacks given up by the Broncos, they credited as an organization Russell Wilson with 30 of them, running into trouble. Like it's just his fault. And when you take sacks in that, you cannot overcome a sack in a drive. Like the statistics are overwhelming. It's something like maybe like 8% or something of that nature. I'm making that it's somewhere low, 8, 10, 12%, something like that, of drives that have a sack end up scoring. Like it's almost impossible to score if you give up a sack. So like for me, that's a big quarterback statistic. One thing about Bo Nix, he doesn't take sacks. He is quick getting the ball out of his hand. He is accurate, and he's on time. And I would argue you can't be accurate if you're not on time. And so, like, they're really excited. Sean Payton is really excited about Bo Nix and what he knows kind of above the neck from a football acumen standpoint. So, yeah, will they win? I think I'd pound the over. The over-under was 5.5. I'd pound the over. I don't know how many games over 500 or over 5 wins they'll get, but I'm telling you, they are going to be much better as a football team. I don't know what their record will be, but much better and going in the right direction. So that's a good thing for the Broncos. Hey, the Jets, like you can make a compelling argument. The Jets, have the best defense in football, at least in the AFC, have one of the strongest rosters in the AFC. And I know we talk about that offensive line and the issues of that offensive line. But again, as I mentioned, Aaron Rodgers will make up for some of those deficiencies. So I think just roster-wise, the Jets look really pretty loaded. But again, is Aaron Rodgers going to be able to maintain health? There's a lot of those questions. And then as far as Miami is concerned, I mean, offensively, they're ridiculously talented, but it's Miami. The problem with playing in Miami is that when the season gets tough and it gets to be that grindy point about the middle of November, right? And every other NFL city, it's cold, it's miserable. The coaches are up your ass. Like it's just a pain to be playing, right? In Miami, you leave the facility regardless of how bad you played, and you go have a cocktail, and you head to the beach. Like there's just not enough for me. There's just not enough toughness there. They just lack that, and they come playoff time where they have to go to a cold city. They just take a dump in their helmets. So I like Miami. I have no faith in the Miami Dolphins. None.
Who is the team that nobody's talking about? Or I shouldn't say nobody's talking about because somebody's talking about them that isn't getting enough credit, that could be like a legitimate playoff team or potentially a team that could really make a run?
Yeah. I mean, I think most of the teams we give a ton of credit to. I think nobody really is talking about the Rams.
Oh.
Everybody talks about San Francisco, right? Yep. Everybody talks about Detroit, Green Bay with their youth, the young roster and the young quarterback that they paid, all those things. I think a lot of people talk about that. But I am telling you what, the Rams did something very interesting. Okay. The Rams are a spread football team. They're a power run football team disguised as a spread football team. So they're really interesting because they give you the illusion of spread. They show you and say, hey, look, you better play us in nickel or play us in dime. And then they absolutely bludgeon you in the run game. And so what ended up happening after their Super Bowl win is they ended up, Whitworth retired and they got rid of a couple of guys on their offensive line. And they tried to play with a bunch of dudes that really weren't ready for prime time and really are NFL backups. And I remember sitting down in a meeting. I was talking to O'Connell of the Minnesota Vikings, who was there in their Super Bowl run. And so we were just kind of talking and shooting the breeze. And he goes, I'm watching the Rams. They were playing like on a Monday night, right? And they were game planning. They were in there. He just had the TV on. And he was watching them play, and they're getting throttled by somebody. And he goes, then I started taking inventory of their offensive line. And their starting five on their offense was the five guys who operated the look squad at the Super Bowl.
Dang.
And they just got throttled, right? And so last offseason, Sean McVay made some changes and they changed some personnel. They ended up drafting a couple guys, picking up a couple free agents, revamped almost everybody on their entire offensive line other than Havenstein at the right tackle position. And last year, they got that dominance back. And as a matter of fact, they always got beat up by San Francisco. I mean, San Francisco just absolutely manhandled them every time they played. I think they split with San Fran last year or played them really tight twice. But that was one of the reasons they went in that direction. And I still am I'm a huge Stafford fan. I think Stafford is outstanding. He's a guy that we don't talk a lot about, but I think he's outstanding. Obviously, Cooper Kupp is incredible. Puka Nacua, incredible at the wide receiver position because they're complete football players. And one of the things they do, they call it, a lot of teams run the 11 personnel, which is 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, and 1 running back. But they run what they call 11 and a half personnel. So they run a 3 wide receiver set with either Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp, but they run 12 personnel plays out of it, 2 tight end plays. So they have a strong running game. Well, they'll motion a wide receiver across, and the wide receiver will be in combination block with the tackle, what a tight end would normally do. And they'll run that up, and they'll run it to the strong side linebacker, or they'll run it up to safety and force. Like they run that as though they're tight ends, and so they get favorable looks in the run game because you're always playing them in nickel or dime because they have the illusion of spread, but they're really running 12 or 2 tight end packages or 2 back packages out of their 11 personnel. So they're unique matchup wise because they have 2 guys that, it's most teams don't have 1, but they have 2 guys at the receiver position that block like tight ends and block like really good tight ends. And that's Nacua and that's Cooper Kupp. So they're a unique matchup issue. And I don't think they probably get enough credit for being as good as they are.
Mark Schlereth joining us here, the Stinking Truth podcast, available on Odyssey. Mark, we really appreciate your time. I want to let you promote your TV show you have coming up, but Matt, I have one fun one. If you don't have anything else for Mark,
no, go ahead.
I have an NFL take, okay, Mark, that I want. Okay. You're a great guy to ask for this, so you can either tell me, you can either say, Sal, you're a genius, or Sal, you're stupid, whatever you want to do it, anywhere in between. I know Bill Belichick is a great coach. I understand that. We saw it firsthand in Buffalo for 20 years. But my take is he is not the best coach in NFL history. To me, the best coach in NFL history is a guy you played for. It's Joe Gibbs. Joe Gibbs went to the Super Bowl 4 times and won 3 of them with 3 non-Hall of Fame quarterbacks, Doug Williams, Joe Theismann, and Mark Rippon, of course. I think if all things equal, if you give me a good, solid NFL roster and a not elite quarterback, I think I'm taking Joe Gibbs over anybody who's ever coached this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I think Joe did a lot of things. Talking to Art Monk, Hall of Fame wide receiver, that his biggest fear and what he wasn't good at was getting off press. And Joe, I don't know if Joe created it, but Joe was the one who made it like a legitimate thing in the NFL. All the bunch formations, all the motions into stacks. He did that so Art Monk didn't have to face press. And so Art Monk could get off in a free release. And everybody does that, right? I'll give you another, for instance. And hey, listen, Bill Belichick will go down because he's got the 7 Super Bowl or the 6 Super Bowl titles as probably the best ever. But I'm with you on the Joe Gibbs thing. The other thing is Mike Shanahan. The fact that Mike Shanahan is not in the Hall of Fame right now is a travesty. because you look at the offenses that are run in today's game right now, from Kyle Shanahan to Sean McVay to Matt LaFleur to Brian Callahan in Tennessee to Zach Taylor in Cincinnati to, Dave Canales in Carolina. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on. They're all derivatives of what Mike Shanahan established in the NFL. Those guys have taken it to the next level, especially Kyle, but they all root out of what Mike Shanahan created all those years ago when he left San Francisco and morphed that 49er West Coast offense in with his zone running game. And now probably 60% of the league runs some variation of that offense, which is incredible, which always makes me laugh when people will say, well, Gary Kubiak or whatever, the game passed him by. The game passed, I get all these idiots on X. Oh, the game passed this guy by. I go, that guy forgot more about football than you will ever know, right? So I always find that kind of hilarious. But, Mike Shanahan, and not just, well, it is a lot because he's a friend and because he coached me, but guy was phenomenal, and his fingerprints are all over the National Football League right now as we speak.
Mark, tell everyone where they can listen to the pod and then now watch you on TV.
Yeah, you can get my pod. Obviously, it's on Odyssey, wherever you get your podcasts. You can find it on YouTube as well. The Stinking Truth podcast on YouTube. Just look that up. And then I just signed. I'm in New York right now. I just signed a deal to do a brand new television show. We started on Monday, and we'll have a new time slot next week. But we started on Monday in the Colin Cowherd time slot, so we're on from 12 to 2 Eastern this week. Next week we start. And we're on from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. But it's called Breakfast Ball. It's myself, Craig Carton, and a guy by the name of Danny Parkins. Excuse me. I messed that up. Danny Parkins, and it's phenomenal, man. It is so much fun, and I'm actually, like, these idiots let me host the show. It's not going to be the smoothest show you ever listen to, but it'll be fun. So it's been great, and I'm moving out to New York, which is crazy.
Wow.
And
wow.
now after 23 years of me traveling, now my wife gets to travel out to New York to see me on occasion when she's not spending all her time with our grandkids in Tampa. So anyhow, it's going to be it's going to be a new adventure. It's a huge challenge. I've never actually hosted. I've always been in the analyst role. So I'm kind of a host analyst, which is a great thing. And it's a cool challenge at this point in my career. So absolutely loving it. We've had fun the last 2 days, and you can find that on FS1, 12 to 2 Eastern, the rest of this week. Starting next week, Breakfast Ball from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. So check us out.
And by the way, real quick, because I could talk ball all day with you, Mark, because I love this stuff. You brought up Shanahan and what you guys did there too. And so I'm a former high school football coach. I'm a wing T guy. Okay, I'm a wing T guy. And we're in the 90s.
Yeah.
You're with Alex Gibbs, right? Alex Gibbs was the O-line coach back then, right? And
sure.
And I remember people saying, like, I can't believe the Broncos are so good despite they're so much lighter. I'm like, no, they're good because they're lighter, because they can move around. I mean, like, I literally got the Wing T book on my desk here. All right, there it is. All right. I mean, that's what I love it. I mean, the innovation back then, right? I mean, the game has changed, but football's football at the end of the day. But I love what we see now too, which is the offense and then the defense. You have to kind of figure out. We're going back to bigger, more athletic middle linebackers. You had bigger middle linebackers. I think that stuff is awesome, man.
The size thing is so overrated. I mean, it's so overrated. Like I never really, like, early in my career, I was 293, 294, but I played my whole career at 285 pounds, and there wasn't a guy I couldn't take off the ball. I mean, I played against so many 350-pound guys. It didn't matter, because it has nothing to do with your size. It has to do with being able to create leverage, create foot energy, feet through your knees, through your hips, through your hands. So if your feet are right, I always say foot over ankle, over knee, over hip. If that is correct, and you get that second step down, and that second step is tied to your hands, striking up, that's how leverage is created. And it doesn't matter if you're 270, you're 280, you're 290, or you're 320. If you know how to create leverage, you can take dudes off the ball. So I played my whole career at 285. I never had
it's amazing
taking somebody off the ball. It was like a hot knife through butter. I always said, for me, the first time I put my hand in the dirt, it was like the movie what was Good Will Hunting. You know how good Will Hunting say, hey, man, you know what? I could just always play. Like Beethoven could see keys on a piano. He could just play. He was always, I could just, like, from the time I put my hand in the dirt, man, I could come off the ball and shorten your neck. And so the whole size thing is so freaking overrated, so stupid that we get tied up on that. It's like 40s and bench press tests and all that crap. That, you know, the last time you'll run a 40 or the last time you'll do a bench press test is at the combine. So if it's such a great indicator of how good a football player you are, why don't we do it all the time? Because it doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with your ability to play football. It's an athletic endeavor. That doesn't mean you're a good football player. Running a fast 40 means you can run fast, and doing the bench press test for a lot of reps means you're a good bencher. Doesn't mean you're a good football player. And so it just is a lot of the things that we get tied up in as a media or as a fan base. From inside the locker room, we laugh about it because it just doesn't matter. It has no bearing. I remember one time, and I know you guys got to go, but one time this big muscle pig, he comes into Denver. It's late in my career. I got big fat belly hanging over my shorts. You know, I'm shirtless. You know, skinny legs. You know, like I'm beat up. I'm probably year 12, and this little muscle pig playing defensive line comes in. And he is pretty proud of the way he's put together, right? I mean, he's strutting. He's like a peacock in there, just in a tight pair of shorts, no shirt on. And I'm just eyeballing him from across the locker room. And he looks at me and says, what? And I say, listen, no offense, but my experience tells me you got way too many muscles to be worth a shit playing this game. I'm just telling you. And we cut him the next day. He had one day of minicamp, and he got cut. And so, like, there's a lot of stuff that people think make you a good football player that have really no bearing whatsoever on your ability to play.
You are speaking so many truths right now, because obviously, like, we both cover the team. We're in the locker room all the time. And I always tell people the best football players in that locker room are the ones who look like they would not be that good at football. And every single time, it's true. It's like, who are the best players the Bills have? Josh Allen, who's just like a specimen, but looks like a regular guy. All those years they had Kyle Williams, you could put Kyle Williams in anything and just like totally blend. It's like always the most unassuming dudes who just know how to play ball. It's just the way it is. And thank you. You just like hit that you hit a home run there.
All right, good. I'm glad,
you got it.
I'm glad I could do that for you.
Well, listen, I want to see you. I want to see you show Parkins how it's done and come off the ball on that show. Okay. I want to see you show him low man wins is how it's done, Danny.
Dude, but Danny, I would kill Danny. Like, if I hit Danny one time, he would be dead. Like,
Mark,
end the show.
Mark, thank you.
We're off there.
That's right. That's right. Hey, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Again, the Stinking Truth podcast. And of course, check out the new show on FS1. Thanks a lot, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, guys. Take care.